So as we look at the map here, and you may have seen this map before if you've already done the activity on the Magna Carta, but during the late Middle Ages, as I said, kingdoms are starting to die out. People are starting to want large countries again with large governments that can create big armies to take on the Vikings, who you learned about in the opening video for this particular unit. France is who I want to talk about in this particular activity, which is this green country you see right here. The issue that was happening in France during the Middle Ages, or the late Middle Ages, is while France owned most of what we know France is today, England, up here in the tan color, had many properties and lands and people living towards the coast of France. The bottom line is France wanted them out. So that sparked a war between France and the United Kingdom. At the start of the war, and this war becomes known as the 100 Years' War because it lasted 100 years. Actually, it didn't last 100 years. It actually lasted a little bit longer than that, but 100 years just rolls off the tongue. So we call it the 100 Years' War. It was a war between France and the United Kingdom, where France wanted to kick the English out of France for good. At the beginning of the war, England had a pretty big advantage. They had invented a bow, which is called the longbow. The longbow is a very large bow, which has a huge pullback span. These arrows were strong enough to get through the armor of the knights of France. So early advantage went to England. It wasn't looking good for France. But France believed in a prophecy. They had this prophecy, and it's kind of a strange one, that a simple maiden, basically a female who works on a farm, would rise up and help the French defeat the English. That person becomes none other than Joan of Arc. Okay? Joan of Arc was a simple maiden, just like the prophecy stated. She was a simple maiden from a French farm who claimed to have gotten voices from angels who spoke from God, who basically told her to rise up and fight for the French to get the English off their lands and to put the rightful king into power. So she is one of the few women that we really get to talk about in this class who played a very influential role in early time periods. And for her, we're talking about someone who actually took up a sword and literally fought for what she believed. She's an interesting story because as you learn about her in this particular activity, you kind of have to make the determination if you think some of this stuff really happened in terms of what she claims to have heard from the angels and whatnot. But what she did, what she physically did, and what happened to her are all true. The French won the war after Joan of Arc's death. Joan of Arc was captured by the English at one point, and she was put on trial for heresy. They basically said that you didn't speak to angels, that's the work of the devil. They called her a witch as well, and she was burned at the stake as a witch. But that pretty much made her a martyr, and a martyr means basically somebody that people will rally behind and draw strength from, so to speak, towards a particular cause. So the French rallied together in her name and ended up kicking the English out of France for good, and allows them to form their own country with the same borders that you see today with France. So what you're going to do in this particular activity is pretty straightforward. You're going to click on the video in the Schoology folder, which is an animated hero video, much like the one we watched on Marco Polo. And there are some questions that follow that video. It's a very good video that focuses on not so much on the war, but on the actions of Joan of Arc and the role she played in the 100